Okay, we'll go ahead
Can I
and
write
call
their
the
names?
joint city council meeting of April 9th to order. First of all, we just
How
want
did
to
this go on
thank
there?
everybody.
Got it.
Bye-bye.
Uh-oh. We ask you guys to put yourself on mute, please. Okay. Good to go. All right. First of all, I want to say thank you to our neighbors for coming tonight. Want to also say thank you for those out in the public that are here. Gresham City Fire, thank you for your service. Clackamas District 1, thank you guys for being here tonight. Our electives, Mayor Stovall, thank you. And Eric, thank you guys for being here tonight. Tonight we'll be jointly discussing and considering the presentation of city's fire service.
Thank you, mayors and councilors, everyone in attendance. Yes, we were talking over the fire emergency service options and alternatives. It's my pleasure to kind of introduce what we'll be discussing. Have myself, the Wood Village Finance Director, Seth Reeser, talking about financial components and some background of the Oregon property tax system. City Manager Ray Young will then be talking about what other cities have done in the broader metro region, and then we'll be outlining the proposal. So what we're discussing, we have a problem statement, and while we're here talking about fire, the problem is really the Oregon property tax system and the finances that have occurred throughout Oregon since Measures 5 and 50, 30 some odd years ago, and what that's done really, especially over years. So we'll talk about briefly the Oregon tax history, impacts of Measures 5 and 50, we then want to spend a brief moment just so everyone's up to speed and remembering and awares our history with the City of Gresham and contracting for fire and emergency services, the different iterations of that contracting agreement, where we are at with negotiations for renewal and its latest proposal. We then also have a proposal from Clackamas Fire District 1. We then let you all discuss, and what we really need is a direction on which option to pursue, because everyone needs answers. We're all in budgets right now. Our three cities, Gresham, fire districts, everyone is doing budgets, and there are budget impacts and implications for everyone. Do want to point out that while we have collectively the three cities commissioned a report from AP Triton to help evaluate fire services, fire studies, that is still in a draft form, so we don't have it. We also working with Tiberius on economic analyses of districts, levies, et cetera. That's also still drafts. If we can turn back time 3 years ago, this would all be great information to have and walk through it. We are where we are. So I'm going to stop it right here and share Seth's presentation talking about finances, which is what really got us into this place and to start. Oh, and just quick reminder, if you do have questions and things, because we had to space everyone out, just make sure you try to talk into the microphone. Those watching remotely can hear. I would also suggest records for the YouTube stream.
Mr. Mayors, councilors, my name is Seth Reeser. I'm the finance director for the city of Wood Village. I've got about 15-minute presentation. It's going to talk about kind of the financial reasons why we're in the position we're in and some of the issues that have come up as we've been looking into this and what some solutions might be. I'll start out with property taxes because it's the biggest revenue source for our general fund. So Measure 5 passed in 1991, then Measure 47 passed in 1995, and that got turned into Measure 50. And that created this tax system we have that has a real market value and a taxable assessed value. So here you can see the real market value in red and the assessed value in blue. And since those measures passed, there's been a gap that's been widening between what a home's really worth and what you're allowed to tax on it. and I apologize if our council's heard me talk about this a lot, so I'm probably covering some ground, but I want to make sure we're all kind of approaching this from the same base. So what makes a good tax? It's something that accommodates for both inflation and growth. And there's really three types. You have sales tax, property tax, income tax. And the reason why those are the three big ones is they all kind of incorporate inflation and growth into their base. And so, as you can see, since the end of World War II, they've all relatively been the same and pretty stable in terms of how they reflect what's actually going on in our communities. So if property tax system isn't working, is it not working because inflation is broken or because it doesn't account for growth well? So this looks at, we have a cap on taxable assessed value of 3% a year. What has inflation done since Measure 5 and 50 were passed? Well, it's actually tracked slightly below that 3% cap. So if inflation is not the problem, what's the problem with our property tax system? The biggest problem is how new properties come on the tax rolls. And they come on the tax rolls by something called a change property ratio. And that's where they essentially look at everyone in an area or county and take a look at all the real market value and taxable assessed values and come up with the average, and the new home pays the average regardless of what each individual home does. So this is a kind of an example of individual houses that have real market and taxable assessed value. Some are low value, some are high value, some have very close assessed value, real market values, some have a very big spread. What the county does is they take all of them and they add them all up and they come up with whatever the average is. And that's what new property gets assessed at. So why doesn't that work? Well, taxable assessed value is capped at 3%. Real market value is not capped and has been growing in the Portland metro area closer to 6% rather than 3%. So because this is all a big, long mathematical equation, the county assessors process in a black box. The problem really boils down to inflation is already accounted for in both assessed value and real market value, but growth is not. Growth is only built into real market value. So when they run these ratios, essentially what they've done is every year they do this, new properties come on 1%, 2%, or 3% less than they did the year before because of how this is done. So this is kind of what it would look like if that model was consistent. So, that equation always grew at 3% and 5.5%. It doesn't always do that. What's actually happened in Multnomah County is you have some fluctuations due to economic factors, but generally it is tracked with that same problem, which is every year properties come on the tax rolls at less and less value. Why does that matter? So we're all sitting in a lovely new city hall. Hopefully you guys all probably drove in through the past old city hall, which is now the byway, part of our urban renewal project, 176 residential units, 10,000 square foot of commercial space. It was a great project. What wasn't great was when it came on the tax rolls. If that had come on in 1997, we would have raised about $500,000 a year in revenue, which is the same as if we were able to fully tax 135 of those 176 units. Now, can we provide the marginal cost of police, fire, parks, schools, social services for that? Probably, because we have fixed costs that aren't going to increase the more people you add. But the problem is that ratio has been going down. So when it actually came on the tax rolls in 2023, it came on at, the market value is 45 million. It came on the tax rolls at 15.8, which is the equivalent of us being able to tax 62 of those 176 units. And somewhere between 1997 and 2023, the answer of can you continue to service those with the tax revenue you're getting went from a yes to a no. You can't provide the police, schools, fire, and all the services that are demanded if you're only able to tax 62 of the 176 units or households that are moving in demanding services. So this is, every time this happens, we as a community are faced with a problem. Do we spread our services a little bit thinner for all of the residents who are here, stretch our cops and firefighters thinner, Or do we ask the people who are already here to pay more through system development charge fees, utility fees, additional taxes and fees, taxing the people already here to make up that service deficit? In any one house or any one property, this isn't a problem. But when you take 30 years of growth and it's this death by 1,000 cuts of 1% to 2% every year, this problem just keeps exacerbating. This is kind of the dilemma that we find ourselves in. This is Wood Village. I will say that when I built the slide, what's wrong with Oregon? I didn't mean to put our logo right next to it. That's just how it fell in the slide. It's not Wood Village, it's property taxes. Back in 2000, we collected enough property taxes to cover police, fire, 911, and parks and most of planning. Fast forward 25 years, our property taxes don't cover police and fire, let alone 911, parks, or planning. And every year, this graph gets a little bit worse. The gap gets a little bit bigger. So I wanted to talk a little bit about compression because one of the things that we've talked about since is looking at fire districts, looking at local option levies. What does that look like? So I'm going to take you through probably 5 minutes of an example of compression and how that impacts the decisions that we have before us. So Measure 5 created a limit on taxation of $10 per thousand and $5 per thousand. But that limit is based off of the real market value of the property. What our permanent rates are actually taxed on is the taxable assessed value. So where compression comes in is, and this is an example from Sweet Home, their total general government rates, permanent rates and local option levies are $16. Well, 16 is more than 10, so the property has to be in compression. The issue is you take the limit times the real market value, which is 200,000. You take the tax rates and multiply it by the assessed value, which in this case was 120,000. As long as this number isn't bigger than this number, there is no compression. But the closer the taxable assessed value is to the real market value, the more likely that you are to have compression on that property. So the same house for $200,000 real market value, if it has a taxable assessed value of 170, then all these service providers should collect $2,700. Well, the constitutional amendment is you can only collect two. So the local option levies, which are highlighted in yellow, get compressed first, and then the permanent rates start taking a hit until you get down to that 2,000. So that's why compression affects some properties and not others. Next, that's just a snapshot of property by property comparison on 1 year. What happens over time? So let's take that house that had 40% compression loss in 1997. And let's say that real market value grows by 5% a year and taxable assessed value is capped at 3%. What happens? 12 years later, the compression loss is 10% if you don't add any new local option levies or permanent tax rates. Another 14 years later, you actually are entirely out of compression and you have more room underneath the constitutional limits to collect taxes. So properties, as long as they grow by more than 3% a year, and again, compression is calculated individual property level. It's not community-wide, it's not by class of property, it's each individual property has this own calculation. So here's kind of an example of what this looks like for Wood Village. So we took a simple 8-house, let's say Wood Village is only 8 houses. The county tells us what the average house is worth by calculating that changed property ratio for Wood Village. So you have some homes that are mid-value, high value, low value, and you have taxable assessed values that go from anywhere from 76 to 33%. Well, in Wood Village, we're not even at over $10 for our permanent rates. This is all of the tax rates that get levied for general government. We're at $9.12. So when we run a compression calculation, there is no compression because real market value can never be lower than taxable assessed value. And our rates are lower than 10, so we can never have compression. Now, there are some cases where you have small properties or oddities and exemptions that's not true. I think we have under $500 of compression on $357 million of assessed value. So there are quirks to that, but this is generally how it works. So what happens if we pass a new property tax district, say around 285 or 292, which are what District 10 and Clackamas are. Well, that jumps this rate to $11.97. So we go through this calculation of here's what the Measure 5 limit on taxation is. Here's what the taxes calculated are. As long as this number stays less than this, there is no compression. In order for us to start experiencing, you would have to raise our tax rate to about $17 before we start seeing significant compression. And the other thing is, people don't talk about compression loss like it's a bad thing. And in some ways it is, because loss is a bad word. Nobody wants to lose. But what a lot of jurisdictions like City of Portland have found is that they keep layering on districts. They keep layering on local option levies that keep going up. And they keep adding to that permanent rate so that they can capture those taxes. And so they experience a lot of compression loss. But if you look down here, at $9.12, these 8 houses pay $19,000. When they're levied at $17,000, they should be paying $48,000, but there's $2,000 of compression loss, which means they pay $46,000. So to get that compression loss of $2,200, the taxes paid goes up by $26,000. So when we say compression loss, in order to have compression loss, you actually need to have properties that are close to paying the maximum under the limits of Measure 5 and 50. So that's why you talk about compression loss, but if you're not constantly bumping up against your statutory limits, you end up in the position we're in, which is that bar for property taxes grows slower than the bar for public safety services. This is a snippet of out of Tiberius's report that shows the 4-city area. And these are the change property ratios for Fairview, Wood Village, Troutdale, and Gresham, calculated by the county. And this is kind of a heat map that shows which properties are experiencing compression and not close. So the really bright purple ones are going to be your state assessed industrial lands. Those are ones that have a lot of depreciable equipment that they're constantly at 100% assessed value to real market value. So that's what that is. But generally your residential and neighborhood commercial areas, there's some variation where there's pockets that are high value, there's pockets that are low value, but overall the R3 communities look relatively similar, and that's borne out by the calculation the county does in doing that calculation. So if you look at this in Portland, you'll see some areas that are fully compressed because they have all those overlapping tax districts that have been piled on. But we're not in that situation. So talking about cost of service, because we've been talking about taxation, and we don't tax people because it's fun. We tax people so that we can provide services like police, fire, parks. We want to be able to maintain the service levels that we have, not just today, but into the future. So here's kind of where this all comes to bear is this is the real market value and taxable assessed values for Wood Village that have happened since these measures went into place. And you can see this looks a lot like that red and blue line at the start of the graph where real market value starts diverging, dips and during the housing crisis, and then takes back off. Here's the issue is when we split the system, the first year we had a nominal tax rate. Our permanent tax rate is $3.12 on taxable assessed value. That would have translated into a $2.36 tax rate on the real market value. Well, fast forward almost 30 years, and the amount we collect today would translate into an effective tax rate of about $1.40 on real market value. So what a lot of communities are doing is doing local option levies to try and bridge this gap. You can think of this dotted line as kind of a constant level of service. A good one is cops per 1,000. You want, as the community grows, you want to keep the same ratio of cops, and as salaries go up, you have to keep paying cops in order to keep them employed and not lose them to Amazon or FedEx or whoever. You want to keep that constant service level. In order to keep that constant service level, you start to have to bridge this gap, and your nominal rate of your local option levy goes from 75 cents to $1 to $1.25 to $2. For us to get back, if we were to go back to being in District 10, re-annex and have another 280 permanent tax rate, all that would do to our effective tax rate would put us back a little above this line, and then this would start going down again. So there's a structural gap in our revenues that we have coming in to be able to provide the services. And so that's why this is not a Three Cities problem. Fire districts all over, small cities with fire stations and fire services, and small districts are either annexing into existing ones or merging with existing ones, because everyone's kind of in this pickle where the money that we have coming in to pay for the same level of service isn't keeping up. And the only way to claw back to get your effective tax rate back up to a level that it was 30 years ago is to pass a new district or to increasing levy that increases as this gap gets bigger. So I think that's the point where I'll just kind of put this back up here. And again, this gets back to service. The money that we collect for property taxes goes to providing services from the general fund, which are primarily police, fire, and 911. I feel like I talked a lot, and thank you all for bearing with me as we went through this. That's the end of my presentation. I was going to pause here and see if there's any questions. And then believe you're going to hear from City Manager Ray Young on where we go from here. So any questions from? Yeah, Councilor. They always can change. You know, when you think that the housing crisis in 2008 was a generational event, that flattened the curve out and we picked up a little bit, but then it accelerated right back. This is something that will fluctuate with the market, but in order for this problem to go away for most houses, you'd have to see home values drop by 50%. Get back to where we were 30 years ago. And I hope that doesn't happen. That solves our financial problem, but would create a lot of other problems that we would have to deal with. Yeah.
Other questions? Thank you, Seth.
Thank you, Mayor.
You are up, Mr. Young.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll have to say, we are very thankful to have people like Seth, because it took me years to understand half of what he said. It is a very complicated system we have in the state. And where I'm going to pick up is where Seth left off with you, which is the problem is not unique to our three cities. This problem is common in every single city in the state of Oregon. They are all struggling to provide essential services, because the long-term effects of 5 and 50, as Seth pointed out, are continuing to accelerate over the years, now 30 years later. It is so common that you will find in the packet that Nathan is handing out. This is the staff report and packet that I gave to our council about 3 weeks ago. That's why you're not getting it, because you already have it. But that's why in this packet you will find as the second exhibit is the LOC has put out a whole manual just in December of 2024, how cities can increase their revenues, because it is all the way around this state. Cities are all struggling with this problem. So the problem is not unique. What is unique, and what is really important to understand tonight, is that our three cities are late to this party. Our three cities are cities in the whole metro area who haven't done something to enhance our general fund revenues or reduce our expenses. So we are going to have to face these issues just like everybody else. And nobody likes telling your citizens you're going to have to pay more. But as an example, what I told my council last month, the problem we're dealing with, and sadly, we are also dealing with a Multnomah County Sheriff contract due on the same date as this one, where they are asking for substantially more money, just like we're facing now. I told the element of the problem we're having in Troutdale is if you wanted to just make up all of the extra expense for fire and police, we would have to close our parks department. $1.8 million. Poof. You got to use all that to pay for fire and police. I think your citizens would be more unhappy if they start losing services like that, as opposed to giving the option of providing more resources to continue those services. So all the other cities in the metro area, most in the state, have done a number of things. Now, one, they have joined fire districts, which if you join a fire district, of course, that's a new legal entity that shows up on your property tax bill. I live personally in Fire District number 1, Clackamas County, and it's a whole separate line item, just like all my other taxes. If your citizens join a fire district, then you don't have to pay fire costs outside your general fund. That means whatever you're paying now for fire is able to be used for police, parks, and general administration. So it frees up a lot of money in your budgets to be able to do other things that your citizens probably want. The second thing that you can do is you can pass a local option levy. That's, as Seth may have touched on, that's one of the exceptions to only being able to charge $10 for government agencies. If your citizens say, hey, we want to be taxed more to be able to have more services. Now, the problem with local option levies is they're only good for 5 years, and you have to go back to the citizens and ask again every 5 years. And the third most common option, now the LOC brochure that you have in the packet that you handed out lists like 30 different ways to enhance your revenues. Some of them are very popular. Some of them, like an income tax on your citizens, is not popular at all. But the three most common are joining a fire district, local option levy, or third, you pass a public safety fee that is an extra fee that is put on, most cities do it, put on their utility bill. Gresham currently has a permanent $15 per month public safety fee on theirs. A lot of other cities have done that also. So those are the general three ways that people deal with this general fund problem that everybody else deals with. We are in a place that we are now having to deal with this problem that everybody else has already had to deal with. And most of them have chosen one of these, all of them have chosen one of these options, quite frankly. So we're going to have to deal with this issue or radically cut our services. For your late night reading, of course, this may put you all to sleep, but this gives you all that background information and some examples and the exhibits about how the other cities have dealt with it. Now, in specifically regards to fire service, we are in the metro area probably the only 3 cities in the whole metro area that pay for their fire service out of your general fund without help from anything else. Everybody else in the metro area gets help in their general fund to pay for fire services. Almost everybody is in a fire district. I mean, you look at Beaverton, Tigard, Wilsonville, Oregon City, they're all in a fire district and they don't have to cover fire costs in their general fund. The only cities in the metro area that are not in a fire district get away with it for a couple reasons. Number one, the city of Portland got blessed in 1995 because they were outrageously charging their citizens per thousand back then. And so Measure 5 and 50 locked them in at an outrageously high permanent tax rate. Their permanent tax rate is over $7 a thousand. All of our cities are less than 376. I don't know, whatever it is. You guys are in the low threes, Wood Village and Fairview. So we have half the property tax revenue that the city of Portland does. That's how come they can afford their own fire department. Second of all, Hillsborough is the only town on the west side that if you look at a map of the Tualatin Valley Fire District, it says all these jurisdictions and there's one little hole, which is Hillsborough. The only reason that Hillsborough hasn't joined Tualatin Valley is their citizens have approved a local option levy to be able to support their fire department. It's something I talked to their city manager about a couple of months ago. He says, yeah, they just like having the Hillsborough Fire Department, and they're willing to pay for it through a local option levy. The other cities, such as Lake Oswego, they have a public safety fee, and they also have a permanent tax rate of about $5 a thousand. Again, more than our 3+ per thousand. Gladstone, they also are paying for it out of their general fund, not for much longer. I understand they're going to be putting on the levy to join Fire District 1. They are contracting with Fire District 1 right now, but they also have a permanent tax rate of almost $5 a thousand, and their citizens approved a local option levy so that they would have additional resources. And finally, our wonderful neighbors to the west, Gresham has done this also. The only reason they can finance their fire department without joining a fire district is because they have a local option levy that they passed last May, which is about $1.35 a thousand. And they've been charging for a number of years, $15 per month on everybody's utility bill to help pay for it. So again, the three of us are back on an island all by ourselves, struggling to pay for these services, and are going to have to face the same issues that every other city's had to face and has overcome through these different mechanisms. And so whatever avenue the three cities choose in the long term, it's important to remember that, yes, right now for next year's budget and maybe the year after, it is important what we spend out of our general fund budgets. But if we don't think in 10, 20, or 30 years what the bigger solution is, it's going to kill us. And that's what my biggest thing I want to ask you is, when we think about this problem, don't look at it and go, oh, next year, these are the options, this is what it'll cost. And the year after, this is what it'll cost. No, look, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, because this problem is going to get worse every single year if we don't deal with it. It's one of those things that's no fun to deal with, but it's not going to go away. And so it's important to realize that we are doing something that is common to all cities in Oregon. We're just late to the game, and we have to deal with it. So any questions, Mayor?
Open it up for any questions.
I just want to make a comment. Ray, you've capsulized this very directly in very clear terms, what we're about here tonight. So I appreciate your preparation and the research you've done with our neighboring cities throughout this region. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think Greg is going to come up and talk to you about what are our options.
I'm back. And whether I drew the long short straw, well, I'm here. So I get to present the options. So I'm going to go back to my slide deck here. Bear with me. So a little bit of history of how we got here. Obviously, you now at least have a baseline understanding of the tax implications, et cetera, et cetera. But over 30 years ago, the three cities met in a similar fashion to decide what we're going to do, because at that time we were all part of Fire District 10. And Fire District 10 had been one of the largest fire districts in the state. But as Portland continued to develop and take and annex unincorporated Multnomah County, as Gresham did the same, District 10 was still having to serve its people on less tax base. So the effective rate kept going up and up and up. This is before measures 5 and 50. And so you're looking at rates of well over $5 per thousand. And so it became very financially difficult for those still in Fire District 10, especially in incorporated areas, to handle that. Because Portland and Gresham were expanding, it was actually, I'll call it mutual from what I've read, I wasn't there, that Gresham said, hey, three cities. My screen sharing's paused. Let's unpause that. Bear with me, sorry. I'm just going to reshare. There we go. Sorry about that. They said, you know what, we think because we're growing, we need to expand. We think we can help the three cities along as well. And that's where we entered into our contractual relationship. The first several years, it was, I think it was a 2-year and then a 3-year. Again, I'm reading stuff from over 30 years ago. But eventually we landed on the 10-year agreements that we've been accustomed to. That was done in 2005, the last one in 2015. There has been some other work. And I'm bringing this up not to talk about how good, bad, or indifferent it may have been, but there was a Safer Council in 2020 comprised of the 4 cities, District 10 and some others, that try to look at regional options. Because one thing that came out of the 1995 decision to leave District 10 were several reports and studies. And one of the reports said, yes, it is possible for Gresham to serve the 3 cities and serve them well. You're also going to want to think long-term regionality for a system. You know, with Gresham owning it, how are you going to look at assets? How are you going to look at changing communities and the service needs and the capital costs related to that? That was posed over 30 years ago. And, you know, it's still relevant today. So Safer tried to do that for those that were there that provided feedback. Again, I'm not trying to put judgment and value on that process, but it was recommended that the city should look into a district model. That is where SAFER ended, and I'm not, again, going to talk about the details, the background, the hows and the whys. That is something that was done. You can look over 30 years ago, you're going to need to find a regional solution. 5 years ago, should really find a regional solution. Our contract is now expiring in a handful of months, and we started talking with Gresham about what a renewal could look like with their offer on September 26th. So I'm just really going to highlight the offers and counter offers that were exchanged over the past several months. They are not in front of you, but they are certainly available. They're all public record. So Gresham outlined and articulated what it's paying for fire. You know about the public safety fee that they've had for a long time, the recent levy that a big part's going towards fire. So they said, look, it's not reasonable for our people to be paying these. Communities, you need to pay that as well. So they historically had been more of a taxable assessed value, TAV, that you may see abbreviated there. It'd always be based on some form of a TAV equation. With the latest contract has a very big equation with it, but TAV was reset. This is moving towards a cost per capita approach to what a Gresham community member pays, everyone else shall pay that's using that service. In December, the three cities in a joint proposal offered a counter that basically said, look, we get it. We're not insensitive to what you've done and the work and the needs. So how about we pay our base rate with an escalator, and we'll add a levy equivalent. Based on our math, it would look somewhere around 60 cents per thousand. We're probably plus or minus 5-6 cents in there, but roughly, 60 cents per thousand as an additional amount towards fire, kind of based on what we could presume of the $1.35 of Gresham's levy was going towards fire. In January, Gresham came back with what they called a proposal that, again, same cost, hey, our people are paying this, so shall you be, or anyone else who contracts with us. But it was a 1-year lead-in period that basically took a 50% difference. So if we were paying X and they need Z, we would be paying Y for year 1 and then Z thereafter. There was a lot of conversations going on, some back and forth, and it was decided, it's probably best that the 4 managers, 4 mayors meet, sit in the same room, really listen to understand each other, hear the concerns from all parties to craft a regional solution, because we are partners. So we all met. It was a productive meeting. So then Gresham said, great, cities, put that in some sort of letter. So the 3 cities individually offered a proposal that was structured the same. So we asked for a 3-year lead-in period. The reasons were different. For Wood Village, we can't just add a public safety fee, for example. We have a charter restriction that any tax has to go to the voters. So while we can call them a fee, that's actually a privilege tax under Oregon tax law. For Fairview, I think we know what's going on with Fairview and transitions and things that need worked on. So, more time to understand that, work through that. And certainly from Troutdale's perspective, what's going on with the sheriff's office, and that 10 years ago, they also negotiated agreement with the sheriff's office. So everything coming together, trying to say it takes a lot of work that Gresham knows to build this up, to educate, to get buy-in from communities. Can you give us a lead in time where it'd be a 25% of the difference, then 50, 75, then the full rate? Gresham then came back, I believe it was March 19th, with what they called their last best offer, because again, we do need this resolved and settled for everyone's sake. And it was a 10-year agreement that is in front of you, by the way, as a printout. 10-year agreement with a 2-year lead-in period that for year 1 was a 75%, 85, then the full rate. They did put in a cap of $3 per thousand of assessed value for years 1 through 5, and then $350 for the remainder of the contract. They kept, our current contract does have a 1-year opt-out provision that was retained, and how that works is if for some reason any of the parties, Gresham included, want to say, hey, we're done in July 1, 2029, you need to give notice by June 30th, 2028. So a full budget year's notice. So that was retained. It was stated, though, that if the cities were to leave in years 1 through 5, that lead-in period needs to be paid back. And what that looks like is, so if the cities just had 1 year, we'd collectively owe $2.1 million approximately, and we'll get into some of the specific numbers here in a minute. If we were to leave years 2 through 5, it's a cumulative total of 3.4 million. So you're not adding 2.1 and 3.4. It's because we got year 1 is a larger difference than year. It was a little late this evening. All right. So it's a cumulative about 3.4 because we have some assumptions for the later years. We were pretty good on our year 1 costs with the proposals. We're projecting in the latter years. So that is a payback if you were to leave between years 1 and 5. Currently, under the current contract for building permits and whatnot, that's an offset towards all cost. That came up during our building IJ renewal about a year ago that they'd want to look at that, and that's fine. They also articulated that fire inspections, when there are citations, penalties issued, that also does not go against your payment. That's for Gresham's revenue. We've asked, okay, we're paying more, we get it. Like, I think we all understand we need to pay more. And so when Gresham said to its people, hey, we need to pay more, this is what you're getting out of it, we asked the same question. And again, not judging this is, look, you are buying into the current service model at the current service rate. So it's not like we're paying more and then, oh, you're getting X, Y, and Z. We are getting what we currently have, and as Gresham expands into the future. And again, I'm not saying that's good, bad, indifferent. That's what the offer is. So if you're like, well, where's the extra engine company, or where's the extra apparatus? It's part of Gresham's system, and we're buying into the current market or going rate of that. And that's where at the end of it, we still don't own anything, good, bad, or indifferent. We're not part owners. Like in a district, are you part owners? You have a stake in at least the board, what have you. Cities still don't own anything, but that's where that is. So what does that look like? I'm going to start, so I'm going to have to move our virtual people just a little bit. If the contract didn't end this July 1 and more or less continued for the next 5 years, this is approximately what it would look like. And we want to just kind of normalize it. So this is the bottom here with the individual cities' payments. And again, that is not an offer that's been made, but we just thought for comparison's sake through the offers, that's what we're talking about. Looking at the Gresham offer, these numbers are inclusive of the lead-in period. Wood Village is in blue here because we actually hit that cap. We're also presuming about a 4.5% annual cost increase. Now, this is based on population as well as Gresham's fire budget, less some components, grants, reimbursables, et cetera. So again, this is an assumption leading out to the latter years because we don't know what our populations will be. We don't know what Gresham's budgets will be, but we figure 4.5 gets us at least in the neighborhood in which the ballpark is in. So you see what the rates would be under its proposal right here. We also outlined what that payback would be if we were to leave within 1 through 5 years. This is then the difference of if our contract didn't end, it was continued between that offer and its last best offer. So I'm going to pause here for questions. It's relatively straightforward. Again, it's a little harder to articulate what the future years could be because, again, it's based on population and budget. Don't have, but we can kind of at least project.
Just for clarity, so what is Fairview paying today?
About 1.2.
About 1.2 is what Fairview's paying approximately.
So if I'm looking at this, then so if Fairview is paying 1.2, are you saying in 2026, we're going to?
Correct.
The room goes silent. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Again, plenty of time for questions later once we get through everything. Now, this is where I think it gets a little interesting this evening. Triton trying to understand fire costs, regionality, looking at what districts look like. AP Triton had contacted Clackamas District 1 and other providers to understand service in this region, what that cost looks like. So there was contact with District 1, and over about the past 3 or 4 weeks through that work, through additional conversations, there's been a lot of interest in District 1 serving the 3 cities, potentially beyond, because as both Seth and Ray had articulated, you look at the systems as a whole, there's the consolidation and regionality is a larger trend. I think you could look nationwide, especially looking not just financially, but retention, career growth. There's a lot of reasons for it. And through that AP Triton work, we had call history, service needs, volumes, hot spotting to give to District 1 to see if they were interested or how interested. I will say one of our first conversations, Seth and I just reached out because AP Triton changed some project managers, and we try to keep the project on track to understand some of its numbers. We said, hey, do these look right? One of the first questions they asked us was, are you just trying to leverage the Gresham offer? Or like, are you serious? We said, well, we want to know cost. We want to know service options. So the evening of April 7th, so Monday, we got a hard, fast proposal from District 1 that could start July 1. Now, I added this slide. A lot of these things Gresham has and Gresham does. So I didn't add it because we've lived with Gresham for over 30 years. We know its service. We know what it provides. We don't know what Clackamas 1 provides, but this is in more detail of all these are in the proposal. But certainly it's a deep response provider, especially when you look at wildfire and urban interface protection. They have 19 apparatus and specially trained people. We can look back to the gorge fires or fires in the recent, not too recent past, and understand the value. Hopefully you never have to use it, but the comfort that communities feel when you have that kind of system in place. And again, I'm not saying that Gresham doesn't have capabilities to respond. It's also, they have, a volunteer service, cadet. I believe Gresham Fire has a cadet program. So again, a lot of these things Gresham does offer, but also so does Clackamas in a larger district. So the offer. So Clackamas District 1 has a base rate of just over $2.40 per thousand because we have those fractions of pennies. They also have an operating levy of 52 cents for an effective rate of $2.92 per thousand. Now, years 1 and 2 of a contract, because we wouldn't be annexing right away, this is a contractual relationship, would be the base rate only, so that $2.40 amount. They also require some additional investment, and that's important because in our collective history as 3 cities, we've never had to own, maintain, operate a fire system. Some of you have had police systems. None of us have ever had fire. It's been, it was District 10 and then a contractual. So time to pay up. I think, regardless of Gresham or otherwise. So what District 1 asked for was, we need a place for our people and equipment, a site in Troutdale, and then a site, in between Fairview and Wood Village, because that's looking at the maps. And we've seen that from different reports and studies. That's where stations are needed. We also need to order a Type 1 response unit. I'm very sensitive that fire professionals are very particular about what you call it. So if I call it a fire truck or engine, it's already wrong. So I'm just leaving it as Type 1, and it's a big red thing that comes with. So that's in there. They're about $1 million, and it's a 4-year lead time. And so Clackamas says, well, we will certainly provide equipment to service you in the meantime. It's also important that you have skin in this game. And there's also substantial, new personnel costs. It's not just the cost of, the people's salaries, but you have to run new academies. You're hiring up 24 to 27 new people. And in the meantime, paying people overtime. So for years 1 and 2, there's also a $400,000 personnel startup cost that's actually being shared by District 1. So the first few years look a little wonky, and we'll get in those specific numbers in a minute. And then years 3 and beyond require that full 292 rate. Now I'm understanding that I was going to call it 97. In 2027, that levy's up for renewal. As part of this, you do have to look at an annexation vote. It can't be a forever contractual relationship. Otherwise, we're in the same boat we've been in for 30 years. So the timing, we know it's not going to be years 1 and 2. It's probably going to be years 3 and 5 that there's an annexation, at least effort or vote. So service will start July 1. Initially, it's a 3-4 person company for the 3 cities. I say 3 or 4 person because kind of depending on the facilities, when we can get them, what they can house for personnel. To say that's essentially what we're getting now, I understand, Gresham has other stations that they service with as part of the larger Gresham model. Obviously, District 1 has other stations. they're simply farther away. And that's why by January 1st, as we get that second location, leased or otherwise, there'd be an additional 3-4-person company for the 3 cities. So minimum a 7-person response any given time of the day, plus the full array of services offered by District 1. Depending on how annexations go or the actual taxable assessed values go, there's options and opportunities. Do you buy additional apparatus? Are there additional people? The future is hard to predict. But at minimum, it's that 7 personnel all the time serving our 3 cities. So how does this flush out and compare? So again, this is based on taxable assessed value. So for years, this is the net kind of for the 3 cities combined. We've got one-time startup costs, and these are general estimates of, we have a lease, we have to, upgrade facilities, or, even if we lease a space, it's has to, enhance it to make it living quarters, meeting space, et cetera. This 550 is a 50% deposit on that new unit. So you look at then the total offer down here at the bottom. And then we have the Gresham offer inclusive of the discount or lead-in period. So, you can see it is substantially more. We're not going to try to hide that fact from you. I think the difference is, and that's part of the discussion, is that long-term, we have to pay more. There's no more. For 30 years, we got a good value with that relationship with Gresham. I like to believe it was, at least for the bulk of it, mutually beneficial, that Gresham got a little more because we were adding a little, we add a little more than maybe what we consumed. But I like to believe it was mutually beneficial through the bulk of that period. There's no more deals like that to be had. It's either go without, or these are the prices. And the question really is, what's that long-term solution? 30 years ago, people behind you made a decision that worked then. You're good, bad, or not, you're in that position tonight. So if we try to normalize all of this out to taxable assessed value ratios, because again, Gresham's using the per capita, most other things are TAV. So again, I'm going to start from the bottom up. So again, the current contract on that presumed rate, not that we're getting it, these are equivalent TAV rates. And you can see they're really good. They are, and Gresham treated us well with that, and we got a good value. Under the Gresham offer, that's a per capita, but converted into a TAV. Honestly, Troutdale gets a reasonable deal because they have a very high TAV, mostly due to, you have a lot of high value industrial, and good for you. But that doesn't mean that you actually have the cash and you're capitalizing all of that. You just have a high TAV. I'm not saying you have cash in the bank. For the other 2 cities, because of how our TAVs are, because of our populations, you see even Wood Village hits that cap. Fairview, you change a few assumptions, they're right at that cap as well. So how that relates then to Clackamas's offer, sorry, that's a little bit blocked there. Wood Village and Fairview, at the end of a 5-year period with the assumptions, you can call it near a wash. It's plus or minus something. For Troutdale, it is more. Again, that's looking at that per capita versus TAV. What I can say is, we're under Clackamas, we're all charged the same TAV rate. Under Gresham, it's the same per capita rate. If you may ask, why are these still different if we're all paying, $240 here and then $292 here? A lot of that's just those first-year lead-in costs and how we might want to split those out, understanding Troutdale's position that under Gresham, it is an attractive offer, and how that may relate to what Wood Village and Fairview do. So we're not here to discuss that tonight, how if it's decided to pursue District 1, how those year 1 costs are divided and chunked out. We just want to provide, if you were to normalize it to TAVs with both offers compared to the current offer, this is what comes out of it. So before we turn it over to you for additional questions, discussion, a direction, we've rented, for the past 30 years. I'm not going to say that being part of the district is owning, but it is different than a contractual relationship, a full annexation into a district. And I'm also going to say it's probably, it's not all roses and hugs, probably. We have our school districts, we have some special districts. And we already see what that happens when they go out for bond levies or other items, and we want some things too. And there's some of that battle there and who's going to get the new increment. But realistically, it's how you can long-term add that taxable rates to maintain service levels. You can do it through fees. You can do it through operating levies. That also is a bit volatile. So the question before you all tonight is that best long-term financial consideration, value and service for the three cities. Again, if this were 3 years ago, I think that we'd all be very comfortable with these conversations and leading into where we might go. We're not 3 years ago. Everyone needs an answer of a direction for budget planning, et cetera. So unfortunately, it falls upon you this evening to make that decision. Oh, and thanks.
I would just like to add that when you look at the numbers up there for the different comparisons of Clackamas versus Gresham, remember that we have counted in there, it assumes the discount in year 1 and 2. From Gresham's offer, we lose that discount if we leave within the first 5 years. If the three cities join a fire district, we lose that discount. Now, Gresham, if they agree to go with us into a fire district, then we wouldn't lose that discount. But we can't necessarily trust what Gresham voters would do or not do, just what our own voters would do. So remember, when you're comparing the numbers, realize that there may or not effectively be a discount if our citizens vote to join a fire district in 2 or 3 years, because we'd have to pay that discount back within that time. So it's just important to remember that when you look at the numbers. Thanks, Greg.
Well, Ray, why don't you stay up here? Because now it's. Ew.
All right, so now, Greg, if you don't mind kind of exiting out of this so we can see others that are on the, out there. And so we'll open it up to questions from the council and mayors. Questions?
I just had a question. So really, we have.
Can you speak into the mic so they can hear you, please?
Sure, I can.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just so I understand, then we have 2 options here before us tonight. We've got either the Clackamas option or the Gresham option.
That is essentially correct.
Oh, this works. There we go. So
We don't
I
have.
don't have buttons on ours.
there was some noise discussion about joining Fire District 1 down the road as a possibility if we go with them. That was my understanding from here. Has Gresham Fire District made any noise about inviting us to join in so that our residents actually have any say on anything as far as levies and so forth, is my question.
So, so currently the offers are contractual based, whether it's District 1 or Gresham, it's still a contract. The idea being with District 1 being a district, there's an expectation that there be efforts and an annexation vote. No guarantees on how that would go, but there's expectations there would be a vote. Since City of Gresham doesn't have a fire district, it's a city department within its government. There's no vote to join it, if that makes sense.
But they haven't made any noise about creating a fire district, inviting the 3 cities to join them for some representation and equity.
As Greg indicated earlier, we had those discussions for several years with the Safer Council in 2020, which was spearheaded by Gresham, but then it was closed down for reasons that the 3 cities never really understood why. So we had those discussions, and then they went silent for a couple of years. They have discussed it. They're supposed to be having their own, as you know, you may or not know, the 3 cities have done an economic study on the compression that Seth talked about. So that we have found that if we join a fire district, compression really will have almost no impact on our property tax revenues for the 3 cities. Gresham was supposed to be doing that similar study. It's been months since it was said to be done. No one's seen it yet for Gresham to get that same information. So until that study that we've been waiting for from Gresham for months comes down, they're not willing to commit to that because they're not sure what compression would do to them in terms of their property tax revenues. And so that's why we don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
But
if
that
I
answers my question.
Just, I want to add a little bit to it. We're not in a position to presume, ask, or tell what Gresham will do. Certainly, as we saw from Hillsborough, it probably makes sense to join a district. Its people, its community says, no, it's important to us to have this. It may make financial sense or on paper for a Gresham district, but its people may not want that. And that's not for us to say that's the right choice for Gresham. And I think that's the tension, I don't want to say tension, as we looked at SAFER, as we've gone back and forth of why aren't we doing this, there's an understanding that it is Gresham's department and it's Gresham's community to decide what's best for it, and that's not for us to say. Now, do we want to be part of that, and how that may go down the road? Again, that's what we're here to talk about. Versus if a district makes sense long term, and to start that process sooner than later, there's also an option for that.
Greg, Ray, and maybe even the representatives from Fire District 1. People, I don't think everybody understands how a fire department works when it's under control of a city council as compared to a fire district board. So what we're talking about here is a fire district. So whoever wants to elaborate on how that works for the members of that fire district. So I'm going to leave it to you two to decide who's going to do that.
Well, first of all, I mean, we could ask, we have 2 board members from Fire District 10 who are here this evening. They could give you firsthand about how they operate a fire, even though they don't have a fire department, they contract with the city of Gresham also. They do elections, they have board meetings, they assess a property tax. So,
Well, but maybe fair enough for both.
yeah,
Yeah, I just want to get a clear picture.
fire district.
So,
Generally, a fire district is just like any government entity. The citizens get a vote in the board members. They have public meetings like any other city council. They have a permanent tax rate just like any city does. And if they want to get more than that, they have to ask for a local option levy to get more than that, which is what Fire District 1 has done with their people. And so they are directly answerable to the citizens who elect the board members for them. Their budgets are public, just like any city. So they operate very similar to how a city council and a city government works in terms of election accountability and transparency.
and the board is decided on a regional basis, numbers.
It depends on if you create a fire district out of thin air, which you can do, a brand new one, you can decide how to do that. My understanding that Fire District 1 is an all-at-large, and they have how many board members? They have 5, and so they are elected from the whole fire district region. And I believe Fire District 10 is the same way. You have 5 and they're just regionally all at large. Yeah, the same thing. So that's a common way of doing it.
Well, and to, not to put any of our people in the audience on the spot if they don't want to, a distinguishing factor when you look at a city as a whole and all the things that we deal with. There's police, fire, law enforcement, parks, planning, public works. To say they all compete with each other in a right environment, it's a very nice harmonious dance and everyone gets along and everyone gets the resources they need. We understand the realities. You could look at larger cities or again around the country and who's getting what cuts or who's getting what benefits and the tension that creates. Not saying a district as a district and a board and operations is perfect by any means. It is also singularly focused. They're focused on fire and what that needs to provide for the region. You can also make a point of, well, the cities are closer to the people. You can also, I think, make another point that a well-ran district is also closely connected to its people. You can take a really good city, you can take a really bad city. Those aren't going to make good comparisons. You could take a really good district, a really bad district. Again, you can't really make large draws on those 2 comparisons. But, I think what Ray said, and also a fire district focuses on fire and, medical emergency response, special stuff exclusively. Cities, we got to do it all. If that helps.
Well,
again,
it does. And it's a city has lots of responsibilities and lots of things clawing at the revenue. And that can change from year to year. And it's not to say that a fire district might not have a surprise engine they have to replace. But the budgets for our city we have to compete with all the services we need to deliver. And that budget has to be divided up that way. When you move fire out of that cost in our cities, that money then goes in to divide up for the continuing costs of water, sewer, law enforcement. So that's a distinction here that I think is important. And it's important for us to, again, I believe, think about this in 10 years. I'm not going to be here, but I'll tell you what, I'd be embarrassed in 10 years if the conversation comes back to something like this and there's not a solution for our residents. This is about what's best for our residents now and in the future.
I've heard several times about the city of Gresham during this meeting. It seems as though the Gresham is the elephant in the room, okay, based on what they have and what we don't have. They have their own fire department, okay? They have their own police department. We don't have that. Matter of fact, one day I was driving down the street on Interlochen, and there was a citizen that was riding with me, and one of our old mayors was walking down the street. And he said, "Do you see this that you're riding on?" I says, "Yeah." He says, "In about 10 years, it won't belong to you. It's going to end up being owned by the state because you don't have the money to afford to have it." And that kind of scared me a little bit. But I think the thing that I'm really concerned about and what I really care about is how much does a firefighter make? I mean, how much, what's the going rate? And, you know, and I'm sure that a lot of people would be interested in knowing that.
Well, I could ask the firefighter in the room, I guess, what a starting firefighter works at Gresham Fire Department. Do you have a range?
So it was 74,000 to 108,000. That's salary, not inclusive of benefits and what have you. So, you know, a third option, not necessarily available July 1, is could the three cities, you know, when you look at the cost, whether it's Gresham or District 1, that's a lot of money. Could you do it ourselves? Short answer is yes, for a time. Inevitably, as we've seen again throughout the state, Portland metro region, whether it's because your depth of service, you know, you can have a handful of firefighters, but you're not having the specialty things. You're not having the medical triage, the low acuity, the education, the outreach, but you can serve the immediate needs of your community. You can have a station or two, a couple apparatus, some good people. Over time, those good people are going to want to work for the districts or larger organizations. There's typically more money, more room for growth, advancement, and they probably don't have to move to do it. So again, could the three cities form our own thing? Short answer is yes, not by July 1. And again, probably in 10 or so years, we're back in the same question, but now we've got assets that how do they transition? How do they move over? That's something that we didn't touch on. Again, you know, Gresham owning it, it's not just as simple as our decision, move to a district and, you know, we just pay someone else or annex into it. They have assets, they have liabilities, and how that moves and transfers over matters to everyone involved. And it's more complex than that. It's not, they write a check. So I just wanted to point that out as well. So I'm not sure if that answered your question or where you wanted to go with it. But short answer is,
Thank you.
could we do it? Yes. And we'd still be here at some point.
An angle that Wood Village is looking at this has always been a regional solution for 20 to 30 years. And as Greg mentioned, could we do it? We could, but we'd be here again. And for us, we don't want to do that for our residents because any fee, any levy, we have to go to the voters. So we would like to do it once and to their best, to fit their needs as best possible. So that's the approach we're looking at this. And so as each city will need to make a decision and continue to ask questions, I mean, now's the time and look upon your needs for your residents as well.
I think, the question before us is, are we going to look at joining a fire district? We've heard the reasons why other cities around have done it. And I've been a skeptic, but I think I've been convinced that that is the way to go. There's also, it's kind of built into, besides Gresham's stated disinterest or non-interest in joining a fire district. And believe me, since I was sworn in as mayor in January, I've been reaching out to every possibility for what could we do. It wasn't, Clackamas District 1 did not come to us. We all, I'm sure we were all reaching out, trying to figure out an alternative if we wanted to join a district, because we knew if we contracted with Gresham, that was not going to be in the cards, at least for a long time. It's right in the Gresham proposal that if we, the opt-out, the 85%, 75%, 85%, 100% 3-year ramp up. If we sign up with Gresham, we have to go 5 years unless the cities mutually agree, including Gresham, to pursue another option. And Gresham has been very clear they're not interested in a district model. So I think while I recognize for Troutdale, it's a more expensive option at this point, in the long run, I've been convinced that a district is the way to go and would be a better thing. And Clackamas District 1 is offering a really good option. At first I thought, gee, how could they do that? But they're going to provide excellent service. There's no question Gresham has provided us excellent service. We've been with them for 30 years. Everybody loves the firefighters. Everybody loves them. And all the services provided, there's just no question about it. But we're at a crossroad. This ended up being so much more expensive. It started us looking. That was true in Troutdale. It started us looking around for alternatives. And once we started looking, we got all this education about compression and districts and what's happening regionally. And so I think the bottom line is, are we interested in joining a fire district, or at least contracting with it now? But I'm fully expecting that would be followed as soon as we have to put it to the voters, and that won't be an easy sell. I was actually around when we pulled out of Fire District 10. That was a way easier sell because you were taking us out of the district that was a separate line item on the tax, and just having it paid out of the general fund. This will be harder, but as other cities have done it around the region, I think we can do it. I think we need to do it. So that's where I'm at.
Mayor, just back information for everybody. The city of Troutdale last summer hired a political marketing firm who does those types of things. We had them do a study, a presentation to one of our public safety working group. Wood Village has now retained the same firm. Gresham, for Troutdale, I'm talking to our council members that we probably should tag along with Wood Village and start focusing on the possibility of having a levy in May of 2026. And that if the three cities work together, generally you're getting the same messaging to your citizens. You combine your resources. It becomes the three cities are finally taking control of their fire service and doing something. And so that's the general direction your staff is leading right now to recommend to the three different councils.
And I just want to clarify a point. So when Wood Village reached out on a PR firm and whatnot, it was well before we even had the Clackamas was going to cost more. And we knew with our restrictions, we couldn't just add a fee. We knew we would have to have voter approval. And we knew we were paying more. So I just want to make it clear, this wasn't, oh, we're thinking district all along. It was, we knew we were going to have to pay more all along, and we'd have to go to our voters to do that.
Just reiterate the point I made earlier. I just feel more comfortable with the possibility of the people I represent getting to vote on levies and a board and so forth, as opposed to being subject to the whims of another jurisdiction. No offense to Gresham, but if we have the opportunity to have a fire district board that the citizens get to vote for and get to vote up or down on levies, I'm just way more comfortable with that, along with what, you know, you've illustrated about the difference between the line item and general fund. Is just, it makes me way more comfortable with a 30-year solution.
I would tend to agree with a lot of things that are said. I've never been disappointed with the service that we've been receiving over the last 30 years. I have personal experience that I brag about often, that I felt very cared for. This is not an indictment on what we have. It's just more, we know that we're facing a massive, for lack of a better term, purchase. The question is, how do we want to make that purchase? We have two different choices. One of them is deplete our savings and try to rob Peter and pay Paul and try to figure out what we're doing there. Or do we open a new credit card essentially? Maybe a little too simplistic, but we're getting down to which financial model are we more comfortable with and which one is going to serve us better in 10, 15, 20 years. Then we can start talking about, okay, what do we have? What are the two service models providing that are different? But I think the first thing that we're faced with right now is which financial direction are we going to go?
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I guess just so I have all the information, because this is fairly new to me, but what are the potential pros and cons for us being in Multnomah County joining an entity in Clackamas County versus one that's in Multnomah County? Or is it irrelevant? Is it a state issue?
Well, easy answer, it's irrelevant.
Okay.
Currently, the Tualatin Valley Fire District serves 3 different counties among the jurisdictions. And Clackamas County Fire, if I'm not correct, they're an independent government agency. They can serve anybody they want. I'm not aware of any restriction in state law that says you can't jump a county line. Pardon?
Currently served.
So they currently do. This is Chief Nick from Fire District 1.
So yeah, short answer, short term, we'd be writing our checks to someone else, because regardless whether it's Gresham, whether it's District 1, it's a contractual relationship. If it does work out for a full annexation and that's successful, yeah, they can cross county lines, and it happens all the time.
Other questions, other comments? Yep. We'll go here. And
If we do wind up being annexed or joining, and we run into this in 10 years, or our future selves run into this in 10 years, how easy is it to unannex ourselves from a district?
Oh, well, we can wind back the clock over 30 years ago, and that's what happened. I mean, the tax structure is different now. So the concerns that were raised over 30 years ago, not saying they couldn't replicate in some manner or fashion, but how budgets and tax rates were put together before measures 5 and 50, basically an entity, whether it's a city, district, whatnot, said, here's the budget, here's what I need to run next year. Sent that to their county. The county would then look at their assessed value and just say, bam, then here's your rate to collect that amount. It's very much like how bonds are done now for capital stuff. With all the restrictions we have with, even like a fire district still can do operating levies, but again, they're only good for 5 years. So that's coming up. But let's just presume, great, we annex in, if that's the route we go, and the voters approve it, years or decades go by, it's like, wow, we really don't like them anymore. It can be unwound. It's a process.
But then you have to have fire service somewhere else.
Yeah, my question was, had to do with response times. Are we going to see improvement with District 1 over Gresham's response time?
So I'm going to be really, really careful with this response because as we've all stated and is clear, Gresham Fire has provided a good service for the value. That's not the question before us. So in looking at what's the response time is going to do, I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know. What it does seem likely and probable, maybe not right at first as everything's are getting staffing up and there's some transitions, but you have your dedicated station in Troutdale with that team to respond to Troutdale and area calls. And we know there's been a piece missing in the Fairview Wood Village boundary border area, especially as you go further north by the lakes and that part of Fairview. So having a station and response there does fix that. And it's no fault of Gresham where its stations are and how it serves. It's just if you have a closer station, by nature of that, you're going to have a faster response. So I'm going to answer it that way. Again, trying to be very careful of not disparaging anyone because, again, this isn't a question of quality necessarily. It's a long-term financial, what makes most sense and what will protect our community. But I'd like to believe by nature of a district approach where they can now and into the future strategically outline where the service needs are, the hotspots, and what apparatus and people are needed to serve that. When you contract with any city, there are limitations to that because they're not necessarily going to put capital outside their city. So just by nature of where stations and facilities are located, you should be able to get a different response.
Yeah, just to add, it's important to realize that response times are quite often controlled about the location of a fire station. That's why, the 3 cities are an add-on to the city of Gresham's fire services. And so all except one of their stations are in the city of Gresham or way out in Fire District number 10. So as Craig indicated, Fire District 1 says we'd really like to have a fire station up near Wood Village and Fairview, down the lower in the north end. So in that area, it's foreseeable to say you're going to see response times improve in that area because you're going to have a station that's going to be closer when that gets up and running. And I know Chief Nick at Clackamas has looked at all our data and all of our calls and et cetera. And I would believe that he doesn't think that our call times are going to be any worse than they currently are right now with Gresham. So we're not going to see a reduction in response times. It's just going to shift a little bit in terms of location. So, and that is a concern.
And again, I just, this example is a perfect example of what a district could do. Where the fire department would be located would be centrally located, as Ray has said, and that would be at the needs of our 3 cities, not the needs of a 4th city. So again, it's not at all, and we've over the times here and talking about this has never ever been about the firefighters in Gresham. They're fabulous. So it's never, ever been about that. This is about how we can serve our citizens. And the discussion right now about where that fire station would be located, and it wouldn't happen in the first year, obviously, but where it would be located to serve our citizens, both fire and emergency response.
Yeah, Mayor, if I could add,
Counselor.
thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
Counselor.
costs for the three cities for the next couple of years on our, the impact on our general fund with Fire District 1 will be greater than the first 2 years under Gresham. However, it's not so much of a difference if we leave before the 5 years, which would tend to be what it sounds like is what we should be planning, is to try to get to a fire district model before the end of the 5 years. And if we didn't do it with Gresham, we'd have to pay back that savings anyway. But the impacts our general funds will take in the next year or two, if again, big if the citizens will approve joining the fire district, then our general funds would reap the windfall of being able to get back some of that money that we invested in moving into a fire district model by contract. And then it would free up monies for us to do those other things, police and parks and other things the cities want to do. So again, as Councilor Minor said, and we've talked about, we've got to be thinking beyond the next 2 years to think about what do we want our fire service to look like in our communities in 10, 20 years. Continuing with the contract model within another city where we pay it out of our general fund just is going to continue to crunch us. And we've got to make sure our citizens have a really good choice.
Greg, I haven't heard any negativity from any of people on the councils. What are our next steps? What do we do?
Well, thank you, Councilor, because I was going to see if I could maybe, because I mean, I truly appreciate the position everyone in this room is in this evening. We have our regional partners, our regional friends, our colleagues here. These are uncomfortable conversations. They just are because of the timeframes we're in, what's been going on. So I didn't envy my seat. I certainly don't envy yours. And someone needs to make which direction we're going to go. If I'm to paraphrasing comments and thoughts, it's, gee, district makes a lot of sense for a number of reasons. That's nothing against the Gresham. The model is what it is over there, and the reasons are their own and they're valid. Sometimes I get told that every day, but I like to believe, reasonableness meets reasonableness. And if you all decide, hey, we really want to pursue this district thing, we know there are implications and impacts to Gresham. We don't know what they are. Gresham probably doesn't understand all of what that may look like. So I'd like to believe, because we like to be partners and we understand the importance of region as the four cities, as East County, that everyone in this room, if district is a solution, can find a way to make that happen that at least doesn't harm anybody. Now, again, I get told I'm naive every day, and I'm purposely not looking back to see what faces may be made at me. But I like to believe that because I also know how important the relationships are, which is also why assuming no one's standing up to say, here's the direction we should go, because of that relationship and how much it means to all of us, how important it is to our cities, to our communities, to East County. So if that helps.
Yeah, I will add, whether it is the Gresham mayor, the Gresham city manager, the board members from Fire District 10, the Fire District 1 people, I like all those people as people. I do. Despite our disagreements and our wrangling about these contracts and stuff, they're all good people. And we all live in East County. We all want to get along. But this is one of those issues, I don't mean to say, but after all that doesn't diminish any of that. But we have to be thinking about our communities and the long-term plan for our fire. And just this model of a city controlling a fire department as contracting with them it just isn't. And the sooner we start dealing with it, the better it's going to be for our communities. And if we can work with Gresham to do that, that was our hope on the Safer Council, that we would all together as a community be able to proceed in lockstep with a fire district in East County. But for us, the rubber's now met the road and we have to deal with it, the three cities, with the problem in front of us. So
I guess with that, the next thing would be each mayor would convene a vote with their council in which direction they would like to proceed. I can go ahead and start. And so I would either entertain a motion by our council to which direction the city should go.
I make a motion that we move forward with the current conversations we're having with District 1 Clackamas Fire District.
I second.
It's been moved in second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Counselor Clark? He's been going through some stuff, so motion carries.
Now, excuse me, Mayor, let me point out really clearly, none of our city attorneys here, but I play one on TV. This is a work session tonight, so that this vote is not a binding vote. It is a recommendation to staff. Later on, when we continue to these negotiations, you will get a chance to an official vote for public comment, for all those normal things that we do. So even if you say yay tonight, you can say no later. That was clear.
So it's direction on,
It's direction to staff.
To staff.
What the consensus is we pursue to get to a place where we can actually have an official city council meeting for each city, and then you can officially vote in the proper legal manner.
Let me modify my motion. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
You're too late to vote.
I
No, they're
move,
modifying it right now.
I move to have our 3 city managers to begin having conversations and bringing a final recommendation to our council.
I'll second that.
and first and second, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 That passed.
Motion carries. Mayor Kudina?
No, I think it's appropriate. I'm going to pose one of our to Fairview Council if we would like to follow suit. If we would like, I will go ahead and make the motion. I move that we direct our city manager to pursue conversations with Clackamas Fire District 1 and see where that goes.
I second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There we go.
And likewise, I would entertain a motion to direct staff to continue pursuing the contracting with Fire District 1.
We have a discussion on the motion.
You'd like?
I just want to say that, I'm glad this isn't a binding
Can you speak into the mic?
because we don't like to do things without hearing from the public.
Right.
So I just wanted to make that point clear. I would hope Gresham would realize how much money this could possibly cost them, and I would like to keep that door open. Gresham, Troutdale's not that hard to service. We have like 3 beauty bark fires and a couple car fires a year, and it's a tremendous amount of money. But I don't know if anybody else has any.
Yeah, if I could, I just wanted to clarify there's a lot of talk on district annexation, 3 to 5 years on average. Is that a pretty common time frame, or is this something that can be done immediately, getting into a fire district, just to clarify?
I would say rarely done immediately, mostly because whichever district or service is coming in wants to prove itself first. I think it's been done as quick as 2 years. It might be a little faster than that, but generally I think 2 years is and I'm just going to glance over here. I'm getting kind of a nod that, yeah, 2 years is kind of on the quick end, but that 3 to 5 isn't uncommon as well. Rare to do inside a year.
Okay, so hypothetically, if, for example, the Gresham offer was pursued and we stayed for 5 years and then at that point looked at a fire district, it would be another additional couple of years on top before anything would be removed from general fund. And we're looking at potentially the risk of costs increasing in that time frame, but it'd be another couple of years on top. Okay, thank you.
Well, all right. So I think I heard you, Glenn. We can't direct staff to do something for Gresham. But we could direct staff to have Troutdale pursue the contracting with Fire District 1 with the eventual suit of joining the district.
Mayor, if I could add one more thing, though. I can't know the future, of course, and I don't know what Gresham will do with the things that were said tonight.
No.
But this motion allows us to begin our continue our conversation with Fire District 1, but nothing stops Gresham from coming to us and saying, hey, we are going to join you in joining a fire district. We do want to go with you for the next 2 years. And so we're willing to do this in this contract to make that work. Then we would come back, maybe a different recommendation or something that's more, but so that's still possible. But at this point, You're just basically saying, continue talking to Fire District 1 to see what they come up with. And if Gresham comes back and says, all right, maybe we could do this instead, that's better for all 4 cities in the long run.
Understood.
I'd like to make a motion to direct Troutdale City staff to continue pursuing a conversation with Fire District 1.
And I'll second that.
Right, very good. I'll just say, I think Jeffrey's on there. I don't know if he wants to participate, but I'll just call a voice vote. Are we all in favor? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Troutdale, as usual, had a little discussion, but we came to you at the end.
Mayors, councilors, guests in the room, regional partners, regional friends. Our direction, as I said, I like to believe that reasonableness meets reasonableness. And as we continue these conversations, we don't want to harm anyone. We don't want to harm our partners. And hopefully we can find a mutual way that obviously would be back to you as it gets iterated that does this transition that serves everyone in the best way possible. So thank you for your energy and effort today. I know there's a lot of meetings coming up in April. It's meeting month. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, want to thank all staff for everything that the work that they've done, the mayors for the continuing conversation, as well as the other city councils for jumping on board on this impromptu but kind of needed meeting. And at least we all can say that we have a direction that staff will be pursuing and until the next steps. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
I want to congratulate Mark for getting discharged from the hospital while we were watching.